Okay, so today is the 8th of November. Wow, 8th of November. And we are going to kind of check in, do kind of a quarterly check in today regarding where all things advanced placement. And so we're going to get moving on this. So, again, just keep in mind that we're trying to make sure that we're talking to each other, that if there are issues that come up in one place, that it's not, usually confined to that one area. Problem solve, get input, and everybody have a better understanding of the whole process um, from both a large district perspective and from the school and classroom perspective. So, today, going to just do kind of a check-in on the whole registration process, where we're at. Um, we're going to talk about the Alliant Energy Center a little bit, make sure everybody's aware of that. Get some feedback on the new trial that we went through this year on the join codes. Um, Good, bad, and things to change for the future. Begin our conversation about transportation, and then we'll wind up with there'll be some miscellaneous pieces, but then focus on online testing at the end. So that's where we're going to go today. And anybody have a question at all, please feel free to jump in. So we're always trying to improve. I know that we all are, and to do our best for our students. So that is the critical piece. Keeping in mind that we are working with our national partners. And so some of the information around African American studies, for instance, does come directly from College Board. And there's a lot of information floating around on the national level, but we also want to make sure that we're providing as true and close to accurate information as possible on the local level. So, current status. When registration closed nearly at the end of October, the 22nd of October, we're approximately at 4,300 exams registered for this year. That compares to 3,600 roughly last year. So we are up significantly. And as I shared in another meeting this morning, from the year when Sarah and I first teamed together on advanced placement testing, more than 5 years ago. And I'm saying that kiddingly because it's been over 10 years, but the number of exams have gone up by 230%. So it's a huge increase. And so those are the kinds of things that we need to really, why we're having more meetings, why we're trying to get more people involved, because the dynamics of this whole thing really becomes critical when you have that many exams. So when we added this year the pre-calculus and African American Studies exams, we were expecting 500 more exams. At this point, pre-calculus is the largest exam in its first year with roughly 428 registrations, just beating out number 2, which would be English language and composition. So both of those are very large exams. And so that's kind of an interesting twist to everything in and of itself. I don't know if we can expect continued number of sections next year in pre-calculus as we had this year across all the schools, but that's a distinct possibility. So now registration, something that we always kind of like at the tail end of the year say, oh, and by the way, this happened. I want to bring up and make sure that we at least address it at some point. But one of my concerns is that we actually have more students who register for exams than take them. And by far, the majority of students who register but don't take exams are those who are economically disadvantaged, also known as free and reduced lunch students. There are a lot of avid students as well. And so what I would like to do is to put our heads together a little bit, not necessarily today, but in the near future, on encouragement for those students to take the test, regardless of whether they're going to get a 3 or higher, or if they I know I had to convince one young lady last year not to walk out of the exam simply because she was struggling with it. It's like, no, 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 no. This is important that you try it, because this is an opportunity. And I don't want students to miss this opportunity to grow, let alone potentially have, college credit earned. Taking the test is an experience that you need to do anyways, I think. So I think as we approach the next month or two, so, before winter break and then shortly after there, we really need to look at ways that we can continually be encouraging students that, yes, you've signed up for it. This is going to be, you got this. You're going to be doing just fine. So we'll kind of reach out and see if there are strategies that people have in the near future. But I just want to put that out there, plant the seed as something that is of a concern of mine. And where are we? Yes, Emily.
Thank you. Can I just ask a quick question related to that?
Yeah.
I think what would be really helpful is once we have the final registration roster, if we can know who on that roster is all Avid students. And I know this is a sticking point, but if there's any way to know who our students are that qualify for free and reduced lunch. Because I think to do that added layer of targeted support, we need to know who these kids are.
I know. So it would be easy for us to do the Avid. Probably difficult for us to do the free and reduced, just because of the sensitive nature of that information. I'll see what we can do, but.
Great, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so looking at the year, we kind of laid out the year calendar-wise last month or in September. And so we can kind of see where the year is going, but we've already completed the first two completely, those portions. We are now in the phase for accommodations. That window to apply for accommodations is open through January 18th of 2024. The registration window has closed for the standard fee. The late registration will open on the 16th of November. So that's coming up next week. I believe that's Thursday that window will open. So just keep in mind these things. I currently have transportation sign up to be like the first week after we get back from spring break in April. It's a month ahead of time, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but that's kind of where we're at. The standard administration is definitely on May 6th through the 17th, and late testing is May 22nd through the 24th. That has not changed. Okay, update on the location. So as always, we're going to do the standard administration at the Aligned Energy Center. The contract for these spaces is nearly set. Just so you know, the costs continue to rise for this. At one point in the not too distant future, we were paying less than $50,000 a year. We're now paying, I'm going to go to the board this month, $110,000. That still is a little bit less than what I expect next year to be. But one change in location, the late testing is going to be held at the Aligned Energy Center this year and not Edgewood College. Love the campus at Edgewood. It's a really laid back place. It's nice to be there. It's hard for students to find if they've never been there. The bus, if they ride the buses kind of get lost. And the bottom line is that as we hit 4,300 exams, the amount of space that is needed is pushing on what's available at Edgewood. It's not exhausting it, but instead of completely running all over that campus to try and find space, we're looking at just doing, and we will be doing, the Aligned Energy Center for late testing this year. So the busing should all be the same, parking all the same, everything the same as the standard administration. Looking for some feedback, because one of the things that we did this year, we said we're trying it, want some feedback on the join code process for exams. So in the past, students would register, they would get a join code, and they would go ahead and do that. That's not what we did this year. Sarah worked really hard to get individual student messages to go out via school messenger. They got the message to the students and to the families. And I mean, we have our perspective on it, but I'm just looking to see whether anyone had other perspective on how it went for you, your teachers, and your students in the building. So take a moment and I'll see if there's any feedback for us.
So I personally like the system better. I think we ran into fewer issues with confusion, and it just felt like a cleaner, more straightforward process. So yeah, I liked this, and I appreciated all your efforts, Sarah, in making it happen.
And it seemed to me that there was angst by those students from those students who had done it differently and done it in the past. But once we get this process in place, people will be like, yeah, it's gonna come after registration. They're not going to be worried about as well, where is it? Where's my code? I always had one last year. So
yeah, and with that too, Tim, I liked that the code and prompt was coming from our district too. I think a lot got lost from APTS and spam. In the last several years, there were tons of students reaching out to me. I never got this email. Who is this APTS? And it just got really confusing. And I like that the process was split into 2 clear steps too, and not doing everything at the same time.
And do you think that students were less confused by that, or?
Yes.
Okay. Are there things that let me ask this before I ask the other question. How did staff respond to that? Were they okay? Did they, once it happened, did they get it? Or is there still confusion?
I don't think so. I haven't gotten too much communication from teachers about the process, but quite honestly, our staff is just awesome at following the steps and supporting kids with things that I'm emailing to them. So I think they're just so focused on teaching kids for 50 minutes that they support the registration process, but aren't too caught up in the nuts and bolts of the actual process. So I didn't hear any direct concerns from teachers that this process wasn't a good shift. Mm-hmm.
Good. I mean, and again, if there's feedback that we could have done something a little differently, we'll absolutely take that. So any areas that we could improve upon that come to mind? Okay, silence is golden.
Love that silence.
Okay, then let's move on. So a couple miscellaneous things as we're talking about current status. So there's always questions, and there will always be questions about, wait a minute, during my test, I've signed up and I've registered for, suddenly something comes up and I'm not going to be able to take it on that date. What can I do? Can I take it on the late testing? Because oftentimes students will investigate that on their own through the College Board and AP websites. So there will be a Google form for requesting the late test after Thanksgiving. So once we get back and settled in from that break, there will be a form available. Sarah, are you going to share that with the coordinators? How do you think we should do that best? Also put it on the website.
We tried this process in 2019 to 2020. So I never really got to see it through to the end and then kind of forgot about it. So we're going to retry it. I think what we did that year and what I'm thinking will happen this year is that once it's created, it will be shared with all the coordinators right away so that if there's questions, can just send a link to it, but we'll also post it on our AP webpage. And that would be the preferred way for people to request, just because the College Board requires like a reason why you're taking the test on the late date. And that allows me to track those things and easily keep records for the shifts that are made in my AP. And this will be separate from the 2 exams at the same date and time thing. That what I'm hoping is that I'll get all of those reconciled before I make this form. So then those questions are moot. But if somebody still had a question about 2 exams at the same time, the form would be how they would communicate those things. So we'll know by December what that it looks like, but just know it's coming if you're getting questions now.
Right, and which is also really different than, I mean, 2 exams at one time is very different than 2 exams on one day. I mean, that's, yeah, that is something that's people can handle. So also, you know, at some point, questions will start coming about what happens if I need to cancel the exam. So we'll have a process for that. Again, there will be dates that are after this date. You will not get your, you know, any money back. So for instance, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've got the late registration period coming up, which is automatically a $40 late fee. If you choose to cancel, then that you've lost that, because that's the $40 to register. So, okay.
Yeah, we'll have a period to continue canceling in the same way that we're doing right now, which I've emailed to everyone. And that is to email the cancellation desk at APTS. The reason we do it that way is because they are able to refund any extra funds that are paid directly back in the form of payment that the family used in the first place. And that becomes like a much easier process for them to manage in the months of January and February while students are paying their full balances. There will be a deadline to use that process, and we might switch over to like another Google form for cancellations later, but I'm talking about the spring, like probably April, and you'll know of those changes. Until you've heard differently from me, continue to use the cancel at APTS USA or whatever the email is that I sent you today, and we'll continue to do it that way. But if there's questions about cancellations, don't hesitate to reach out to me at any time.
Okay, so that's kind of an update on where things are at and all kinds of different activities, things going on. Things that are coming up. Going to be starting to work on ensuring that we have transportation. It is my goal to have this done and locked in prior to spring break. Again, based on availability of bus drivers, as we all know, there's all kinds of things going on about busing and scheduling. It appears as though we will not be using First Student, our transportation provider, for AP transportation. So I've got to go elsewhere. So that process will start this week. Once I have a bus company locked in, the first question that they have is, so how many students are riding, so that they can schedule. My response to them is, I don't care if there's 1 or 100. You know, it's we need to provide a bus so that it'll be there. Obviously, there are assessments, there are tests that are kind of lean towards younger students that more students actually require or need to have a bus. But we are going to, again, go through a sign-up process. They want to know today what the numbers are going to be, and I'm going to say, can't tell you. I'm looking at early April as being the possibility for sign-up, but I may have to go sooner than that. We'll see. I'm going to push on them to just be patient and wait till we get this. Once again, my goal is to run a bus. I don't care how many students sign up, even if there's 0, because there's always those students who, oh, my car broke down, or I can't get a ride today, the day of the test. So as long as there's a bus, we'll have it running. So we'll hopefully, I know at West, there were issues last year with where the bus showed up because of construction. I think the same thing was true at East. There were struggles at La Follette because buses couldn't turn around in the space, so they went to a different spot. Memorial, you probably had the smoothest of any bus situations for AP testing as anyone. So we'll just say, let's figure out a place to drop and pick up students at each of the locations early, so that hopefully avoid any of those issues. Okay, now back to African American Studies. Just want to say that again, this will be required online testing. There were questions about whether or not the exam would be A, scored, and B, accepted by colleges, because it's a pilot. This is year 2 of the pilot. We asked, I mean, obviously there are Facebook pages and communities across the United States, and rumors get started. So we went straight to the source. We asked the College Board, what's going on, what's true. So again, as in any other case, students are taking an exam. If they are interested in the potential of using their scores, they need to pay for the exam. The number of colleges that accept the exam is not the same as all the others, but it's growing daily. So there are a number of colleges that are continually looking at this and saying, yes, based on what they know about the course, it will count if you score a 3 or higher, just as any other AP exam. If a student pays for an exam and the college of their choice does not accept it, then the College Board has said that they will refund the money. Did I get that right, Sarah? I want to make sure I'm not saying that incorrect.
I think that what the College Board said is that closer to the exam date, they will have a finalized list of which colleges are going to accept scores or have opted in to accept scores for African American Studies. If prior to the test being taken, a student decides they're not going to test because their college won't accept it, then they'll be able to have those cancellation fees waived. That's before we pay the College Board. So they're not actually refunding anything, but they would work with us to negate any cancellation charges
fees
that would normally be incurred. But I do believe that is if they know prior to test date that they intend not to take it. And we'll have more clarity about that the closer we get. Now that we've gotten that first answer from the College Board, we'll be in contact with them to find out closer to February, March, April, where we are in that process, so that students will be able to make an informed choice prior to test day. Because what I don't believe is true is that a student would take the exam and then say, oh, I don't actually want it because my college will take it, when really it could be that they didn't perform as well as they wanted. So I do believe that decision is going to have to be made before test day, but we'll have more information out about that subject.
Makes sense. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So the other options, as we listed last time for online testing this year, are listed here. We looked at this and said, given the size of the assessments that we give in our district, for instance, AP English Language and Composition, second largest, pretty big, and we don't necessarily want to step into this with those kinds of numbers. So at this point, we're close to making a decision on AP Seminar and AP Computer Science Principles as being online assessments. Seminar is a writing that portion of the test. It's also If I remember correctly, it is a shorter than other tests. Computer science principles is a natural fit for this. So not sure when we're going to make a final decision. I'm going to work through some things with our new associate superintendent, make sure that he is clear and understands this kind of thing, as well as other people in CNI, just to make sure that they understand as well. But the decision will be coming soon. All right. In the near future, things that are going to happen. A list of the students with IEPs and 504s will come to you after Thanksgiving. Again, it's not for you to go through everyone and say what's going on here. It will say, remember, these students have accommodations listed, and that the process will be, right now the window is open for applying for accommodations, but after Thanksgiving, really need to focus on that. It's also a time that people start looking at applying for accommodations for the ACT with juniors. It can be done simultaneously, obviously 2 different platforms, but if you collect the information on a junior who is taking the ACT, it's going to be similar or the same accommodations as it would be for advanced placement. So you you don't have to completely reinvent everything and pull all that information. So reviewing the processes now and looking at the deadlines and making sure that people are ready to move on this. Again, it's open right now, but just so you know that things are going to pick up after Thanksgiving break.
And a little bit to add to that, just as a refresher, the College Board accommodations process is good for their high school career. So if they've already been through the process and they already had the accommodations they need approved, they will continue to have them granted for the entirety of their high school career, unless there's anything additional that is needed. So when I send these lists, again, like Tim said, this list is just for like a heads up. Maybe some of these students might need accommodations and maybe they don't. But at that time, I'll also include who is already approved and what they're approved for, so that you could take a glance and see if it looks like they're set for what they need. And the deadline this year is, I believe, January 18th. So same time frame as we usually have. So hopefully we can get a few weeks in there within the holidays, but a few weeks in there that you'd be able to focus on who might need that application process started.
And again, I just want to reiterate some of the things that we've found in the past is you need to get those initial requests in by that date. They will be fairly quick in turning around, at least the first go. It's the ones that are like reapplying, saying, could you reconsider this, that end up going much later. And there have been some that have literally gone up to the morning of the test. So it's pretty harrowing at that point, because it's like, we don't know what they're going to get. We think they're going to get this, but it happens last moment. Also, this year, again, with the number of exams that we're potentially giving, planning for spaces for those students with accommodations and what those accommodations look like needs to happen as soon as we know what's going on. We've already begun that process of ensuring that we have some of the smaller spaces at the Alliant Energy Center. But, if we need 8 rooms and we only have 6, we needed to get going on that as soon as possible. So, and with that is going to be it for the slides. I'm going to stop sharing that. We'll just kind of say, hey, any questions that you might have right now? Otherwise,
just a quick one.
Yeah.
So the list that you just shared, Sarah, with our remaining students who haven't put the join codes in. So assuming they get canceled tomorrow, those students can register again in the late window, right? And just pay the late fee.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's always kids for which this applies each year. And so what I've done in the past is when we send out that cancellation notice, we would also include information about the late registration window and what that looks like. So yes, that would be something that will be included in the email, and you will know who's being canceled because I'll send you all a list too. Hopefully it's not many. I mean, we'll see where we're at. And I also need to go through, there are some email addresses that have blocked school messenger. So I might need to personalize a couple messages before. I'm going to try to do that before the end of today, or potentially give an extension to a couple people if they had blocked emails. It's not a lot, but there are a few and I can see which ones they are. So you'll know by the end of the week who is being canceled. That might not actually happen till Friday. But you'll be in the loop on that.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. And now I've stopped